Well, the secret is out, and so many people are moving to Calgary right now. But is it really that good? And is it worth it to move out here? My name is Ryan Gillard with eXp Realty, and in this video, I'm going to go over everything that you should be mindful of, all of the pros and cons of living in Calgary, so that you can make an informed decision whether to move out here or not. And by the way, if you have any questions at all about the real estate market, the city itself, a specific community, or if you'd like to book a showing at a home, feel free to reach out. I answer every single message. All of my information can be found in the written description, my phone, my email, my calendar link. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat. All right, guys, once again, it's Ryan Gillard here at eXp Realty, and let's talk about the pros and cons of living in Calgary as I see it. Now, the first thing I should mention is I am born and raised in Alberta, but I've lived all over this country. I went to university in Vancouver, spent about 4 years out there, spent 3 years in the military, and I lived all over the country in that time, a lot of time in Winnipeg, the Maritimes. My dad lives on Vancouver Island. Previously, he was in the Vernon, BC area, so I spent a lot of time out there. So I've been all over the country, and I can tell you, from my perspective, just the pros and cons of living in Calgary versus other parts of this country. Okay, the first point that I'd like to make about why anybody would move to Calgary, and the most obvious reason in my mind, is just we have high-paying jobs out here. So high-paying jobs, low taxes, and affordable housing. That'll be the number one reason that I can think of why somebody would move out here. So if you're from overseas, you're not too familiar with Calgary, it is the center of Canada's energy industry. You could also say that Calgary is the center of Western Canada's financial industry. So along with that, we get a lot of head offices located here. I think outside of Toronto, Calgary has the second most head offices in the entire country. So along with that, these head offices, they employ a lot of white-collar type jobs. My impression is that a lot of other Canadians from outside of Alberta might think of Alberta as like workers on oil rigs, like roughnecks out in the wilderness somewhere. You can certainly find that in Alberta, but I would say that Calgary is a very white-collar workforce. So what that means is all these head offices, they'll hire like accountants, lawyers, engineers, bankers, insurance people, human resources, sales staff. So a lot of white-collar, high-paying jobs are to be found in Calgary. So that'll be the number one reason, and to be fair, there are some negatives that come along with that. My entire life, Alberta has been a very boom and bust type of economy. For the most part, it's generally pretty good, booming at times, obviously. But our economy, it kind of is very influenced by the price of what happens with oil and gas. So as of right now, when I'm filming this, our oil prices are very high. So companies are making money, they're hiring employees, everything is good. When oil prices turn around, again, Calgary is very influenced by that, and we can experience layoffs, companies will go under. So it's a bit of a roller coaster type of market out here. I've met a lot of people, when oil prices collapsed in late 2014, a lot of companies went under, they left Alberta for different jurisdictions. I've met a lot of workers who were laid off during that time, had to find work in different industries. So it can be a bit of a boom and bust roller coaster type of market. All right, moving along now, let's talk about the thing I hate the most about living in Calgary, and that has got to be our weather. So obviously we're in Canada, we have 4 distinct seasons. Calgary is no different. By no means are we the hottest city, and by no means are we the coldest city, but I would say that we have one of the most unique climate patterns in this country. One day it could be plus 20, the next day you can look over my shoulder and there could be a snowstorm. There's a joke out here that you can experience all 4 seasons in 1 week, and it's definitely true in Calgary. And so why is that? So why is our weather so unique? And by no means am I a meteorologist, but I can tell you that half of our city is prairie-like, the eastern half. The western half of our city is very foothillsy. Our mountains are about 1 hour away, and north of the city is very flat, so we can have Arctic air coming from the north. We can have snowstorms coming from the mountains. We can have moisture coming from the south. Calgary is about 1 kilometer above sea level, and all of these weather patterns can converge on Calgary, and it just can be very unpredictable. It can go from plus 20, next day it could be a snowstorm. So it's just very unusual the way our weather patterns are here. Now there are some benefits to our climate, I would say, is that we're a very dry climate. As you can see out the window here, it's a nice sunny day. It's a very sunny climate. There's very rarely will you have like a full week where it's overcast. It's almost always sunny out here. Very dry. We don't have a huge snowfall. It can get downright cold here. Like it can get down to minus 40, but it's not snowing like crazy all the time. It's a very dry climate, very sunny. A hot summer's day could be plus 30. When it's dry climate at plus 30, it's very easy to dress for. A negative with the dryness in the winter time, when it's minus 30 and it's dry, you'll get nosebleeds, your face will crack, your hands will split open. So it's good, have your chapstick, you have a home with a humidifier. You'll need it, it's just a super dry climate. Other positive things about our climate, I'm sure it can get down to minus 40 here, but we have these things called Chinooks, and what that basically is we'll have warm air coming from the Pacific, the hot air rises, and it'll rain basically the wind hits the mountains in BC, the warm air rises and it starts to rain on the BC side of the mountains, and then what's left over is the warm air will come down the mountains to the Alberta side, bringing the warm, dry air. So it can literally be minus 40, a Chinook rolls in, and it can raise the temperature from minus 30, 40, all the way, I've seen it as high as plus 15 within a couple hours. And these patterns, they come multiple times every single winter. So a few times a winter we'll have cold snaps down to minus 40, and we'll also have multiple Chinooks come during that same period and raise the temperature, melt all the snow, and we'll just have hot, cold, hot, cold. So it's just a very unpredictable and unique climate situation out here. And on that last point, I would say that our weather is unique, but I wouldn't prevent a move out here because of our weather. Like, let's face it, we're in Canada, you'll find miserable weather in the winter wherever you go in this city or in this country, and Calgary is no different. So I wouldn't let it prevent you making a move, and I wouldn't move out here because of the weather. It's just it is what it is, basically. All right, so the next major benefit that I like to talk about here is how livable the city of Calgary is. Now, routinely you'll see in publications online, Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver, they're always rated in the top cities in the world to live in. And I would make the argument that Calgary, in my opinion, is probably more livable than both of those cities. And the reason being is I think to have a good life in Calgary is very attainable. And by that I mean we've got high income, definitely higher than in Toronto and Vancouver. We have low taxes out here. So we have a lower corporate tax, we have a lower personal tax, we don't have a provincial sales tax at all, and we also don't have a land transfer tax, which I'll get into in just a moment. So for like a young couple moving out here and they want to buy a property, so the median price of a property out here is still about $570,000, and now that's even after the 20% increase we saw in prices due to COVID. So after all of that, it's still only $570,000, which is definitely attainable for a young couple that both are working. It's definitely possible. What does that property look like? Our properties are very similar across all four quadrants. One of the drawbacks to Calgary, in my opinion, is a lot of the properties are kind of like a bit of a cookie cutter type mentality out here. So that home of 570, it's probably a 2-story home with a double attached garage. It'll have, the main level will have like the kitchen, the living room, half bath. Upstairs will be 3 bedrooms, a full bath, and probably an ensuite in the master bedroom. The basement might be finished, give or take, maybe 50-50 finished or unfinished, with a fenced yard. That property could be in all 4 quadrants, and all of that for 570. Which is still by no means cheap, but if you're comparing that to a city like Toronto, that same home out there would probably be like 1.5 million, I would guess. And with a land transfer tax that you're paying in Ontario, that's an additional $50,000 that you have to provide to the government just to transfer the title, which we don't have at all in Alberta, which I think definitely keeps a lot of buyers out of the market in jurisdictions like that. In a city like Vancouver, that property, it's probably $3 million. It depends where you are in the city, but I'd say Vancouver is even more expensive than Toronto. That same property in Calgary at $570,000, you're probably looking at least $2.5–3 million and higher. Now, the last point I'd like to make regarding how livable the city is, it would be commuting in traffic. I live in the inner city. I work in all 4 quadrants as a real estate agent, and I can be from where I live to the one end of the city to the other, 20–30 minutes tops. It's definitely a very easy city to get around in. Our downtown is right in the middle of the city, so unlike places like Toronto where they have the giant lake and they're spreading out from it, we're spreading out in all 4 directions. So it's quite easy if you're living in the inner city to get around. You're never more than 20–30 minutes to get from where you're going to the next spot. There's obviously pockets here and there. It's a big city of 1.5 million, so there are some traffic hurdles, but nothing like commuting an hour and a half to get to work, like in maybe from Burnaby to Vancouver or say Mississauga to Toronto. You're not spending an hour in traffic unless there's some kind of major accident, but for the most part you can be anywhere you want to get to in say 20–30 minutes. Alright, so we spoke about why the city is so livable. Let's actually take it a step further and talk about what it's actually like to live here on a day-to-day basis. And I would say the most amazing thing about living in Calgary is how great it is for outdoorsy type people. For example, I could get up at say 7 in the morning. I live in the inner city, and I could be on a 5-star world-class ski resort within 2 hours. I could ski the entire day and be back home for supper time. I'm also big into hiking, and even closer than ski hills in the Canmore, Kananaskis areas, even Banff, are some of the best hiking trails in the entire world. Just some epic trails that are fantastic. East of the city, there's also some amazing hiking trails in the Badlands type area. Alberta is blessed in that we have a lot of the varying landscapes that are within an hour of Calgary. Calgary also has 2 rivers that run through it. All along those river paths is green space. There's an endless amount of green space in this city. There's probably about 100+ different dog parks in Calgary, both on leash, off leash. If you're into golf, I'd say there's probably within the city limits to maybe 20–30 minutes outside of the city. There's got to be at least 50 different golf courses, maybe even more, both public and private. Calgary is also a very safe city. I will go to any quadrant of the city at any time, and I've never had any issues at all regarding crime or safety. I'm sure it's a big city. There's 1.5 million people here, so I'm sure crime does happen, but for the most part, I've never had to worry about it. Calgary is also a very clean city. They say it's the cleanest city in the world. I have no idea how they determine that, but we've got excellent garbage and recycling facilities and infrastructure. Just a very clean city. Now, regarding schools, I drive around the city nonstop as a realtor. It seems to me like there are schools all over the place. Public schools, private, Catholic, even Muslim schools. 2 universities, tech schools, colleges, an endless amount of schools. One of the drawbacks is our city is growing so fast that if you choose to live out in the brand new community in the suburbs, there's a good chance that school won't be built yet. It's not to say it's not going to be built, but just not done quite yet. But there are programs that will bus those kids out to neighboring communities. Now, one of the things that I dislike the most about Calgary is just how sprawled out it is. It almost has a bit of a town-like atmosphere in that our city can expand basically in all directions, and so there's a lot of space in between everything, and that it has a bit of a town vibe. It's not the most bustling type of city. One of the biggest gripes that I always hear is that our downtown is a bit of a 9 to 5. Then after that, it kind of clears out into the suburbs, and it's a bit of a ghost town downtown. If you're thinking of moving here and you want to live in the inner city and you're worried about that aspect, hit me up. Please let me know. There are spots around the inner city that are actually quite vibrant and lively at all hours. but the downtown urban core, like the commercial high-rises, it's a bit of a ghost town after hours. There are plans to try to change that, but it's still a work in progress. All right, the last point that I'd like to make is regarding transit and driving around the city. This is definitely a city that you'll want to have a car in. Without a car, I don't think Calgary would be too much fun to live in. Even though I think our transit system is good the way it stands right now, we do have plans to expand our transit system it's called the Green Line, which will connect the Deep South all the way through downtown. Then it'll go up Center Street all the way to North Central. It's a great idea. We've been debating this and planning it, it seems like 10 years now, but apparently it will be built at some point. But even with our transit system being somewhat good, I think you still need to have a car here to fully take advantage of the city. So that's one of the disadvantages, but it is what it is. So that's what I think are the pros and cons of living in Calgary. I'd love to know your thoughts, what you like and what you dislike. Again, if you have any plans of moving out here, you have questions about a specific community, our real estate market, you'd like to book a showing, or if you have plans to sell your property, please hit me up. I answer all messages. You can reach out to me through email, cell, everything is in my description below. Please reach out. I'd love to help you out. Thanks for watching.